Mother's wishes. It all started as a punishment when I was about 13. When I had done something wrong in her eyes, Mother dressed me up completely as her pretty daughter. And as our family was seriously wealthy, she did it in style and costs did not play a role. She really went all out with it. It was pretty party dresses, beautiful wigs, expensive shoes and all the trimmings. I was quite a slim, puny boy with soft features, so the result was impressive to say the least. Initially I found it all horrible and cried a lot and tried everything not to displease her and get punished again, but in the end she always found some reason, as she sort of had fallen in love with the idea of me as her glamorous little princess. After a while I kind of reconciled myself with my fate and almost started to like it, as the awfully pretty girl in the mirror kind of awakened sexual feelings in the pubescent teen I was. And then there were the sensual feelings the clothes themselves provided, the feel of silks and satins on my teenage body, the restrictiveness, the heels, the stockings. It was both confusing and exciting. Of course Mother encouraged and stimulated these feelings. And she didn't stop at the clothes. It was deportment lessons, speech lessons, etiquette and what she called girl lessons, in which I was actually taught how to think as a girl by reading certain romantic books and magazines. By this time I was a girl most of the time when I wasn't at school. By the time I was 16 I was almost completely brainwashed and Mother loved it. The part of frocks had become classy, designer cocktail dresses and prom gowns, and the heels had gone from 3 to 5 inch. The undies had gone from girly to stunningly glamorous and sexy. At that time Mother also decided that I had to get used to the presence of boys and men, so she encouraged her lady friends to bring their sons, nephews and other family members along when they would visit us. At first this really scared me and I cried and begged her not to do this to me, but she was relentless. At first it was just them being there and seeing me, but in time she started to encourage them to sit close to me and actually instructed me to flirt with them and make contact. When one of these boys seemed sufficiently interested and found her approval, she would blatantly invite him over again and set up a sort of chaperoned date where I was glammed up completely, makeup, hairdo, wearing my sexiest evening gown for my boyfriend, who was a shy and unexperienced young man and totally nervous at meeting a stunning sophisticated young lady like me. These evenings were spent teaching us youngsters how to behave on a date. This went from holding hands, him putting his hand round my waist and holding me, to giving each other furtive little kisses. Later in the evening we would learn to slow dance with Mother's very specific instructions how to hold and caress each other, look into each other's eyes and behave as a couple in love in general. If this all went well we were back on the sofa for the final act of the evening. The deep sensual kissing and making out scene. If Mother was convinced we were doing it right, she would leave us alone for a while so we could practice being in love, as she called it. By this time, my conditioning and girl lessons had me reacting to the situation as any delicate, sexually awakening teenage lady would. I loved every minute of it and moaned softly under my man's kisses and caresses and was actually close to orgasm. Mother had won, and at that moment I never wanted to go back to being a boy ever again. Part 2. After that first experience, Mother was of course totally delighted with my initial reaction. I myself was both excited and terribly confused, but I didn't get much time to think about it as Mother wasn't finished with me yet. From that moment onward I was to be a young lady permanently, and Mother actually made me burn all my boys' stuff myself in the back garden. I was now completely immersed in a world of femininity. My closets were filled with skirts, blouses and row upon row of the prettiest evening dresses, ball gowns and cocktail wear. I had more high-heeled shoes than any girl I had ever known, and my drawers contained nothing but the finest undies, all in silks, satins and lace. I was also taken out of school to be homeschooled, which mainly consisted of learning to be a complete utterly feminine young miss of good standing. Never got to see the boy again, as Mother had more grown-up partners in mind for an eligible classy young lady like myself, and didn't want me to be tied to a permanent boyfriend before I had some more experience in dating matters. At that time Mother's friend Mrs. Franklin started bringing her older brother George along when visiting. George was a much older man and I was to treat him like a friendly surrogate granddad. This meant me going all girly and flirty around him whilst keeping up the appearance of it being totally innocent. I was to give him little kisses on the cheek at arriving and going, sitting a bit too close to him, accepting compliments and little presents and letting him caress and innocently hold me as any loving granddaughter would. I was to be a serious tease. Contrary to my earlier boy admirer, George had been briefed on my little secret, but according to Mother he had said that someone who was as feminine as me could in all honesty only be regarded as totally female and should be completely respected and treated as any young lady would expect to be treated. And I should mention that George was in no way a gay man. Even though it was initially all kept very innocent, I really enjoyed my role and to my surprise started to get disturbingly erotic feelings for this elderly gentleman. The attentions of this experienced manly man sort of gave me goosebumps and made me feel even more feminine and sexy than I already did. I guess Mother had noticed this and actually encouraged it. As George was quite wealthy and a rather handsome, well-dressed man for his age, as he was in his late 60s, Mother thought he was a bit of a catch and again set me up to get closer to him. She innocently had him and his sister over for dinner and cocktails. We were all dressed up to the nines in glamorous evening wear and it was all very festive and classy do until Mother found an excuse for her and Mrs. Franklin to leave me and George alone for the evening. I think it was something like a friend falling ill. I had beforehand already been instructed to be very sweet to George tonight and to get romantic. Outside my knowledge, and in not so many words, George had been told about me having a little crush on him. So using my experience of my earlier date together with my flirting and teasing lessons and a few drinks, it didn't take much time before George took me in his strong arms and gave me my first romantic kiss. I was totally blown away by the feelings this elderly man awoke in me and I couldn't help returning the kiss as passionately as I could and clinging to him fervently to continue this romantic mouth contact. My arms were around his neck caressing him and I was softly moaning in between kisses whilst George whispered sweet words of love in my ears. This continued for the rest of the evening without either of us going further than sweet caresses, deep passionate kisses and a gentle hand on my nylon-clad knees. We didn't let on much when Mother and Mrs. Franklin returned and we said goodbye with a little loving kiss on the lips, but the triumphant smile on Mother's face told me she knew exactly what happened.